Hello, everybody. This is Marcel from Oregon coming to you once again with another episode of That's How I See It. Today, I was thinking about how do you stop racism? Well, it's a question that's been asked for some time, a question that gets asked all the time now. I don't have all of the answers. In fact, I may not have any of the answers, but what I do have is something that I think will help with the situation. Because some people don't believe that it's that bad. Some people think that racism is a figment of, black people, Asians, even white people's minds. Something that's not real. As Fox News once said, the only people that talk about racism are the racists, which is just utterly stupid, and that's just why I hate Fox News. I wish it was Fox Entertainment, then it'd be different. Here's something that I didn't know. That 75% of white people have no ethnic friends at all, none. And I think that's part of the problem, is that we don't know each other. We don't have friends of different ethnicities. And, if 75% of white people have no ethnic friends, I'm sure that 75% of black people don't have white friends. I have a ton of white friends, so I get an opportunity to see things from a different perspective. And so do they. And that's what this is really about. How do you stop racism? Well, with my white friends, I've been able to show them a different side of a lot of things that they thought, weren't true. They saw actually happen to me and ended up having to apologize. You can't know someone's problems if you don't associate with them, if you don't at least talk to them, hang out with them. I'll give you two examples, and I'm going to do some reading here. I was in my mid-20s, and I became friends with some people that I'm still friends with to this day, and they were white. And now, for some of them, I was the first black person that they had ever hung out with. And I told them some of my experiences, and they didn't believe me. And after hanging out with me for a while, they had some eye-opening experiences, and I'm going to tell you about one of them. It was one night. We were coming back from the gym. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning. We used to work out really late at night. It might have been even later. It might have been like 3. Because I used to work as a manager for movie theaters for quite a number of years, and I would work from 5 p.m. till, midnight or 1. So when I wanted to work out, I would just work out after work. And, we were driving home, and I remember going under an overpass, and I remember seeing a cop car over that. No big deal. I'm driving the speed limit. We're laughing, we're talking, we're having a fantastic time. And then, not 10, 15 minutes later, I look in my rearview mirror and I see a police car. No big deal. I'm driving the speed limit. I keep a careful eye on that. And the lights flash. Still no big deal. I pull over, roll down the window. How can I help you, sir? Very polite. Officer was like, can you step out of the car? He was very nice and polite. I was like, sure. I get out of the car, and he looks at the wheel of my car. He said, looks like you have a trash bag on the wheel of your car. I was like, oh, no problem. Reached down, pulled it off, wrapped it up on my hand, opened up my back door, fired it in the car. I said, have a nice night, officer. I got one foot in the car, and he said, license and registration. I'm thinking, for what? I know you have an onboard computer. I know you ran my plates. I know you realize there's nothing going on here, but it is what it is. So I get out, I step back out, telling him my wallet, it's in my wallet. And he's like, fine. So I reach in my wallet, grab out my license, my registration, hand it to him. And, he tells me to stay there, don't get back in the car, so I don't get back in the car. And he goes back to his car. Now it takes him 15 minutes minimum to run my information. Now, meanwhile, in the car are my girlfriend at the time and 2 of my friends. They'll change their names. They'll say Joe and James. James has had black friends, and he knew what was going on. Joe did not, and neither did my ex-girlfriend. She didn't understand what was happening. I said, well, this is what happens when you drive black at night. You get pulled over and harassed for stupid stuff like this. No big deal. I told him, calm down. It'll be over soon. And officer gets out of the car, and, he takes me down to where his car is. Now, by that time, there were 4 other police cars there with at least 8 other officers standing out, you know, watching the situation. So I'm over there talking to the officer. You know, he's asking me just weird questions. Where are you going? What are you doing? How come you're out this late? You know, who were the people in the car? And all I keep thinking is, this: I had a trash bag on my car and I have no record at all. What's the problem here? So one of the officers goes to the car and shines the light in and asks for their ID. And this was at the time here in Oregon where you could refuse, and they all refused. My ex-girlfriend was getting really angry. And Joe was just stunned. He didn't understand what was going on. You know, James knew. So I'm standing there, and the officer is now, must be 30 minutes later, is now staring at me and my license like he's trying to decide whether or not the information he pulled up was right. That there's nothing, you know, to me other than just a citizen. He looked and he looked. And he finally said, all right, you can go. I'm like, okay, well, thank you. Took my stuff back, got in the car, and drove home. The entire drive home, Joe kept apologizing to me because I told him I get pulled over for nothing. I get harassed for nothing. It's part of the experience of being a black male. He never believed me until that night. All he kept saying was, I'm sorry, and I had to eventually tell him, you know, to shut the hell up, it's over. This is what happens, just let it go, dude. Now, there's another one where an ex-girlfriend and I, you know, we're friends to this day. You know, we were in the process of dating, and she came to what we called wrestling night. Me and my boys used to watch the WWF every Monday night at a pizza place called Pietro's. Just watch it every night. And when Pietro's closes, you know, sometimes we'd stay on the parking lot and chit-chat for a while. And I knew about how long I could stay out there because Pietro's closed at 11. I knew about how long I could stay out there before, you know, the police came by and, you know, wanted to know why people were congregating in the parking lot. Understandable. And so we're out there one night, and it must be around, you know, midnight. And I'm thinking we've been here a little too long, but it hasn't. You know, my ex-girlfriend and I were chatting away, and that's all we were doing was chatting. And she's white, and she wrote a post about this incident on the day her life changed, and I'm gonna read it to you. She writes, I remember the first time I was pulled over. I was 20. The officer must have been bored. It was 2 a.m. He chatted with me about college for at least a half an hour and still gave me a ticket. The next 15, 20 times I saw lights in my rear view were a bit of a blur, different cities, different offenses, different officers, but always one constant. I was treated with the utmost respect, and I felt safe. I vividly remember the night that all changed. I was 31. It was midnight. I was sitting in a parked car in Pietro's Pizza parking lot, just talking. Don't go thinking different. The man I was dating at the time was black, me. I remember a police car screaming into the parking lot. I remember bright lights being shown into the car. I remember being shouted at in a way that I had never experienced. I remember searching for my wallet, and the man I was with was saying under his breath, what are you doing? Don't move. I rolled my eyes at him, not yet understanding what was happening to us. But then one of the officers put his hand on his gun and instructed me not to move. It was at this moment that it all flashed before me. All those news stories that would come up so often about racial profiling, discrimination by police, harassment, those stories that as a white middle-class woman from the suburbs wouldn't have any experience with. And to be perfectly honest, not to piss off any black folks I am friends with or married to, she's married to a lovely man right now. Some part of me had always thought, I'll bet they might have done something to deserve it. Or I think maybe they're exaggerating a little bit. But I remember sitting in that car that night scared, being treated like a criminal, and thinking, holy shit, this is what young black men are experiencing? It's all effing real, and I'm damn glad to be white. When the police finally left, I was in shock about what I had experienced. The gentleman and I, me, wasn't even fazed. What had been a traumatic event that was 180 degrees different from any interaction I had ever had with law enforcement was just a typical police encounter for him. He really couldn't understand why I was so worked up. And then she goes on to say, in the wake of the Michael Brown shooting this week, the chaos that ensued in the days following, I think it's important to share with all of my other white middle-class people from the suburbs that the issue of racial discrimination in the police force is a very real one, and it's time we get fired up. Now, those two experiences, I believe, encapsulate what I'm trying to say, is that you have to get to know people who are different than you in order to understand where they're coming from. She did not understand. She said so herself in her own words. What's the fuss? What's the fuss? You know, what's the big deal? You're exaggerating. You must have done something. Well, she found out firsthand. No, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it just is what it is. I'm black. It's late. Who knows what's going to happen? And all we were doing was sitting there talking in a parking lot. And I knew the owner of Pietro's Pizza. I knew every single worker there very well. Knew their kids, knew their husbands, their wives. I'd been going there for, I believe at the time it was almost 10 years. They weren't afraid of me. They didn't call the cops. No one in the neighborhood did. The police officer just happened to be driving by and flipped out, apparently. I don't know. But it changed her view. And that's what needs to happen. We need to... Look, you can't walk in another man's shoes. I've never understood that statement. You can't. But you can find out where he bought those shoes. Talk to someone that doesn't look like you. Someone who's not from the same area as you. Who doesn't have the same background as you. Hang out with them. You might find out some things that you didn't think, were possible. You might learn something. Don't judge. Just listen. Just be there. Little things like that may stop racism someday. Or at least help. And that's how I see it. Have a nice day.